Well, it's that time of year when people start pulling out the old space heaters, and after them sitting all summer, why they don't work. Common problem with them is the bearings get stuck in the fan just from it sitting. So this is where we're going to take this one apart and give the fan a loop job. See if we can get this one running again. Let's check it out. Got this classic heater, little thermostatic controlled electric heater that one of my wife's clients had, and she just replaced this like a year ago. I've got her other one that I use in here to heat the workshop, and apparently this one's not working, so she bought another one. I don't know what it is with this woman, but she goes through fans and heaters more than anybody else I think I've ever known. Seems like every year something breaks, so let's just see what's wrong with this one. See if I can make this one work. First things first, let's plug it in and see if it works. Apparently, it doesn't work. Okay. Oh, I thought I heard something click there. Is it the switch on the bottom? There's a switch on the bottom on these, so if they tip over, they shut off. Okay, well, it doesn't appear to be this. I think the fan motor just came on. It's the fan. Cheap fan. The motor is, sounds like it's seized up. This unit's only a year old. Cheap stuff made in China. Not like the little one that I have here that I use in the shop in the winter. I have a little micro furnace, Canadian made one. This is what I use. This sits below my bench, so when it's freezing out here, I just throw this thing on under the bench and it keeps my feet warm. And you get your feet warm, everything else warms up. So that just sits on the floor beside me, and I use that one. And that thing is old as the hills. That's at least 40 years old. That little heater, my parents used to use it in their motorhome when they winterized it for the winter. They used to put that on and just leave it run to keep their motorhome. They had a big, I guess it was about a 28 or 30 footer to keep it from freezing up. And when they got rid of the motorhome, they kept the heater. And I've been using it ever since, just in the workshop here, just to keep warm. I actually used it at the TV shop as well because the owner would never turn the heat on, so I had it under my bench. And it still works. And then there's this pile of junk that doesn't. I'm just seeing what type of screws are in here to open this up and see if we can fix it. Looks like they don't want you getting into this one. It's got security screws. Well, we'll have to figure out a way to get into that. A slotted screwdriver should do the job. This one should work, I would think. But they certainly don't want anybody servicing these things. Probably because it could be a fire hazard, right? If someone were to get in and say disable the thermal cutout or the safety switches, the tip switch, for example, the unit could be a fire hazard. So they don't want to make them easy to get into. So once the screws are out and the warning stickers on the side are removed, this unit should pop apart. And just like that, the heater block on the front here, I got conventional screws to hold the heater block in. There's the cutout switch there. There'll be a safety switch in here as well for sure. There'll be a thermal cutout. Well, there's one here, one thermostat up top there for one. But I'm sure there's another one in here as well. We're going to remove the 4 screws that hold the fan assembly in place. I want to get in there and see if I can lubricate that motor, because it sure sounds like it's sticking, the way that it made a screeching sound when it actually started to spin. There we go. So inside here you've got this is the emergency high temp switch that will cut out and open up if the unit overheats, and then this is the thermostat here. And the fan, we're going to pull this apart and see if I can lubricate it. And here's our conventional motor. I should be able to open the bearing up on this one and remove the actual motor. Might even lift right out of here, maybe not. I think it's probably attached from the back, so if I pop out the heater, I can probably remove the entire motor, and then I can get to the back bearing as well. So we'll pop out the clips that hold the heater core in place. There we go. Now I can get to the screws that hold the motor in place. We'll take the motor apart just so that it can be properly lubricated. Okay, now I can lift the motor out. Well, sort of. 2 more screws. I can lift the motor assembly apart. There's not even a nut on here. It screws right into the back of the bracket, into the bearing. So just these 2 metal screws. With their lock washers. And the motor will come apart. There's the back bearing and the rotor and the front bearing. This one here is gummed up. This is the one here. You can feel it. The other one was fine, but this is the one here that's dry. I'm going to try and remove this pin so I can take the bearing right apart, so I can clean the inside of the bearing itself. There we go. The pin just pops out. Now I can take the bearing apart completely and clean it up. It doesn't look to be badly scored. It just looks like the lubricant is dried up. I'm going to use some 99% isopropyl alcohol and a Q-tip just to clean up the shaft. And of course the bearing housing. And the back housing. These use a sintered bearing, and they do have an oil reservoir, which is this felt. There's a piece of felt right in here that is what holds the oil. And then the oil is presented to this sintered bearing, which is permeable. It allows the oil to be absorbed and distributed to the bearing to keep it from drying out, probably just from the heat being a heater, it just dried out. So we'll put some more oil down here and let that sink in. Should carry the kitchen sink in when I said that one. This little felt actually will absorb quite a bit of oil. So I'll let the sponge soak up the oil for a bit, and then we'll reassemble and see how it works. Alright, I guess it's time to put the motor back together. Maybe I'll put the pin through it first, just to make it easier. Press this pin through. This is what locks the fan. Oh, no problem. That'll go through easy now. Not like taking it out, where it was a little more difficult. Looks like putting the pin in will be a little bit easier than it was removing it. Yeah, no problem. Little press fit pin. There we go. All right. This is the front. There, that spins nice and free now. Excellent. Okay, put the motor back into its cabinet, or into its encasement, its holder. We'll put the other two screws in the back here that hold the motor in place. And then the heater core itself just snaps back in place. There's not much to these heaters, is there? That's why they can sell them so cheap. Not like that little micro furnace that I have, which was probably quite expensive when it was new. I mean, after all, it was made in Canada. But that speaks quality because it's never broken down. Just like that. Just like that. And then this will sit in here like that with its 4 screws. The safety cutout sits right in that slot. Just like that. That's so that if the fan were to stop and it overheat, it would shut off the power. And the rest of the switch goes on top. Got the 4 screws that hold the fan and heater block in place. control panel sits in place like that. Make sure the wires are safely tucked out of the way so that they're not making contact with anything that gets hot. There's the tip switch on the bottom. Just make sure these wires are tucked in. Throw the front cover on. Throw some screws into the back. As much as I don't like the safety screws, I am putting the originals back in just to make it look like it hasn't been worked on. I'm going to test the unit now. For safety's sake, do not plug any electric heaters into power strips. They don't have the current handling capability. If you need to use an extension cord, you need to use an industrial strength cord like I'm using here. Okay, thermostat works. That's the cool air position. Whoops. If I lift it up, it shuts off. 750 watt. And then full power, which is 1500 watts. It's working. You pick it up, it shuts off. Got a little light in there to indicate when it's on. Tip switch, right? So if it were to get knocked over, it shuts off, which is exactly what it's designed to do. Anyway, fan wasn't working before. Bearing wasn't too bad on this. It was just kind of a bit dry. Lubricated it. It's throwing off lots of heat now. Good for another couple years. These units tend to be fine. What happens with them is people use them in the winter and they're working fine, and then they put them away in the summer because obviously they don't need the heater, and over the course of the summer, because they've been used a lot over the winter, the motors tend to stick a bit, and that's what happened on this one. So it's back in service. Thanks for watching.